From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudet. This is Idaho Matters. Earlier this month, Governor Brad Little signed Senate Bill 1141 into law, prohibiting people from camping and sleeping on public property in cities with a population larger than 100,000 residents. Now, across the country, camping bans have become more common, but here in Boise, some are worried that the new law could further victimize those experiencing homelessness and also remove discretion from local authorities. So joining us now to talk more about this new law is Boise Mayor Lauren McLean. Mayor, nice to have you on the show.
Oh, Gemma, thanks for having me.
Okay, I want to get right into this. I know the hope of some legislators is that this new law will basically maybe kind of prod, encourage folks to stay in shelters as opposed to sleeping in their cars or on the streets. So what are your thoughts on that train of thought?
Sure. Well, look, Gemma, the Galloway law is really clear. It takes away the discretion that our police department has in connecting folks experiencing homelessness with the services they need and directing them to shelter if there's shelter available. So I struggle to understand how folks that brought this bill in, that Senator Galloway who brought this bill in, say that this helps get people sheltered when right now in Boise, our police department is able to help people that are sleeping in their cars, direct them to services, have discretion to make the best decision for the safety of our community and the safety of these folks.
Can we talk a little bit more about that when it comes to what police do currently in regards to folks who are experiencing homelessness? Because we do have a community policing system in place, as you mentioned, where if they find someone, in their car, maybe, sleeping on a park bench or something like that, they can help them get to shelter or give them resources. Are you saying that this law prohibits police from doing that and the only line of action would be to arrest them?
When I talked with our police chief, the police chiefs of Nampa and Meridian, the other cities of our side that are targeted by this bill, they all agreed that this bill took away the discretion that they use right now in having conversations with folks to seek to connect them with services that would be helpful to them. And I want to be clear too, this bill targets 3 cities. I appreciated the collaborative approach that the 3 of us as mayors took with our 3 chiefs in sharing our concerns about this bill and sharing the way our police departments currently keep our cities safe, in asking the governor to veto this bill. And we've asked that Labrador meet with us to explain his thinking on what this bill means, given that the Galloway law gives Raul Labrador the right to investigate our police departments in our cities if we don't criminalize homelessness.
Have you heard back from the Attorney General about holding a meeting?
My team is working with his team to get something on the calendars for all 7 of us.
Do you think enforcement of this law, Mayor, would place a strain on police resources? And what it sounds like to me, we're not talking just about police resources in Boise. It's the entire Treasure Valley.
Yeah, and Gemma, I'd encourage you to have a conversation with some of the police chiefs, because in my discussion with them, in my discussion with Chief Dennison, in thinking about the priorities that our community has, and getting more officers on the street to stop people that are speeding, stop people that are running red lights, be in our communities with a neighborhood resource officer model so that folks feel safe and have relationships with the police department and our great officers. Chief Dennison believes that this ties his hands, and he's going to have to, because of the Galloway law and Labrador's investigatory powers, he's going to have to deploy in different ways that put more resources on this issue versus meeting the community's needs.
I want to talk about something in regards to trust, and this might be a better question for one of the police chiefs, but I'd like to get your thoughts on this.
Sure.
Police really do have relationship with people who experience homelessness, and research shows that, to the point that especially people who are chronically experiencing homelessness many times have very close trust and relationships with police, to the point that sometimes these folks can be informants when it comes to crime because they are on the streets. They see things happen. They have a trusted relationship with a police officer. So they will go to a police officer when they see something. Are you concerned that that type of relationship could absolutely go away with this law being enforced the way it's written?
Gemma, that's a really interesting question. And because I've focused my concern on how we meet the expectations of this law with the limited resources that a city has. In a community where crime is going down, we want to keep it that way.
Mm-hmm.
However, that said, our officers do have relationships with people throughout this community, whether they be kids up at Whitney School with the neighborhood resource officers that show up for bike alongs, or the bike officers that know folks experiencing homelessness by name. But the piece about the Galloway law that I would say is most difficult and concerning is the lack of flexibility that our officers, the chiefs in the cities targeted by this bill, believe that they now have once this goes into effect. I mean, imagine, and there are stories out there, a mom sleeping in a car with her kids outside of the place where she works. And if she's on a street in her car sleeping with her kids, typically in Boise, our officers would have a conversation with her. They'd figure out if there are services that they can connect her with. They'd have a conversation about shelter and then other organizations in this community that could support this mom and keep her together with her kiddos. As we read this law, the Galloway law forces officers to take action immediately, to make an arrest. And then the question is, well, what happens when the jails don't take her and she's right back there? Her kids have already moved, and we're right back at the beginning of where we were again. This is an endless loop that instead of working with cities to address homelessness and advance the work that we're doing here in Boise with great partners, this criminalizes those who are sleeping in their cars, among others, and ties the hands of our officers in what they can do to prevent and mitigate this very difficult problem for folks.
I think it's fair to say that I would hope that most everyone does want our homeless population to be taken care of. Now, at the same time, there are people who think that it would be safer to have those who are unhoused staying in shelters as opposed to being in their cars or being on the street. How do you respond to something like that? And I ask that question because I do think that sometimes to this day, there is still a fear of people who are experiencing homelessness, right? Especially if you're in the downtown core and you see someone who is homeless, I think there is something triggered in many people about fear. And so how do you address that?
We have been very focused on making sure that this city remains safe. It's a safe and welcoming city for everyone. And I understand the concern and fear that people feel when they see folks experiencing homelessness, when they also feel that tug of wanting to help folks. Now, Boiseans have been clear. We are not going to tolerate the problems of other cities. And to make sure that we don't experience those problems of other cities, we're going to roll up our sleeves and in partnership with nonprofits, with philanthropists, with businesses, we are going to do everything we can to create solutions to prevent and end homelessness. The Galloway law doesn't help us do that. It ties the hands of our officers in terms of what they can do. So instead of helping someone sleeping in her car, they have to take action immediately.
Let's talk a little bit more about addressing the issues around things like affordable housing. This is something that, as you mentioned, with partnership, that the city of Boise has been on a mission for the last decade to make sure that there is housing, that especially transitional housing, right? That if someone who's experienced homelessness, I mean, we look at Catch for an example and what they do. I think they are an incredible example of, in particular, with families who are experiencing homelessness, getting them out of that situation, helping them with resources. Should our lawmakers be looking more broadly at these types of solutions versus, all right, if you are, again, experiencing homelessness and you are not in a shelter, then this is what the law says, where you will be placed under arrest?
To address homelessness, Gemma, as you stated, and I know that you know well, you need an all hands on deck approach and all of the above approach to solutions. And the Galloway Law isn't a solution, it's a punishment, it's a criminalization. But the city of Boise has been working on solutions and would welcome partnership from the legislature and from the state. In fact, this year I really appreciated that Governor Little proposed $15 million into the Housing Trust Fund that would help the private market, help developers with gap financing to build workforce housing around our state. That was a solution that was taken out of his budget by the legislature. At the city of Boise, we are working on solutions. And as you said, this started 10 years ago with New Path Housing, which is housing for folks exiting homelessness with services wrapped around them to help them on their way to self-sufficiency. And when I was elected, we did a housing needs assessment and saw that we need 250 homes for
Hmm.
folks experiencing homelessness to get them off the streets. And we have more than that many homes right now in the planning process of various stages of development that will also have, because of the generosity of businesses and foundations in this community, the services needed to get families and others experiencing homelessness back on the way to self-sufficiency. That is a solution. And it takes time, but we're working on it, as well as working with great groups like Catch that rapidly helps to rehouse folks that are struggling, like Jesse Tree, that represents folks as they're being charged with eviction to keep them in their homes, because that's the prevention is the best tool
Mm.
to prevent homelessness. And of course, together with the city council and this community, we've looked at housing and how we make more homes available and affordable to Boiseans, and are so excited to be opening very soon on State Street the development at State and Arthur that'll house about 176 families, and 10% of those homes are being set aside for families exiting homelessness. It's a great example of the partnership of city, philanthropists, and the private market that are creating solutions that will help us in the long run prevent and reduce homelessness in this community.
So, Mayor, what happens if cities decline to enforce this camping ban?
Well, Gemma, that's a great question. It's a question that we will be putting to Attorney General Labrador, as well as his expectations of what following this law means. Because as we read it, the Attorney General will be able to investigate the police departments or cities if there's an allegation that we aren't ticketing and criminalizing homelessness or folks sleeping in their cars. And then there's a penalty of up to $10,000 per instance that that this takes place. So we look forward to hearing his explanation of what he believes the Galloway Law to mean. But right now, we are working to ensure that with our police department and community partners, that we're ready to follow the Galloway Law because we must.
With that said, with that type of fine, how do you break that cycle of homelessness?
That is a question that we are asking ourselves. I mean, riddle me this. The police department walks up to somebody, one of our officers who's been deployed on a beat where we've got folks sleeping in their cars, walks up to somebody sleeping in their car, and um, his hands are tied. He writes a ticket. That ticket compounds on itself if we have to write another one, or he takes the person to jail. Then we have to move all this person's cars, etc. The jail might take them. A judge might release them pending the court proceedings, and then they're right back where they started. Do we have to do it again?
Mm.
This is the cycle that, from our perspective, is a drain on resources. It prevents us from focusing on the priorities of our community um, in making sure that all of our neighborhoods have officers. It also makes it harder for us to spend resources and time on those solutions. But that said, in Boise, we've always said we want to support folks with the programs and services they need to get back on their feet. We want to keep families together, and we want police officers to do their jobs. This Galloway law will make that much harder, but I assure you that we remain resolved to create solutions and long-term solutions that care for people and continue to help Boise beat the odds.
Well, Mayor, I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to talk with us about this. We've been speaking with Boise Mayor Lauren McLean about the camping ban that was recently signed into law. You've been listening to Idaho Matters from Boise State Public Radio. I'm Gemma Gaudette.